Alabama coach DeBoer is heading for his first true Alabama rivalry game. How's he going to handle it? Neyland Stadium, Tennessee, one of the oldest college football rivalries. And plus, if you win, you get to smoke a cigar. If you lose, well, you get to watch everybody else smoke one. We're going to get into that and more right here on the All-American Report with Mike Johnson. Like and subscribe, brought to you by mybookie.ag. Let's get this thing going. Oh, what an open, man. Let's go. Was that your go-to right there? Was that your go-to?
No, you know what I was trying to do? And I see that picture all the time. We had just clinched the SEC West. And some dude was like, some dude was yelling at me something about going to Atlanta. He was like, hey, we're going to Atlanta. We just beat LSU in 2009. Or maybe it was 08. I don't know. Probably 08. And I'm like, yeah. I said, I'll see you in Atlanta.
Oh, that's an A.
Yeah, I was like, we'll see you in Atlanta. And I was trying to do the whole A-Town down thing, but it didn't really work. But I was so elated at the time, I didn't really care. I was like, yo, it is what it is. And no, that had to have been 2009 because we were at home. We were in the crimson jersey, so that had to have been like the tunnel screen to Julio, where he looks like he shot out of a cannon.
Yeah, I love
one
that.
Like 22-15 or 21-15, something like that. But yeah, man, that was what it was, man. So we that was the I'll see you in Atlanta. I was telling some guy, see you in Atlanta. Somebody took a picture of that, and it looks like I'm doing like the diamond cutter or something.
I know. I love the diamond cutter. I did that on our tailgate.
Hey, DDP lives in Atlanta. He does the yoga here.
I know. I love that guy. Love him. I remember when him and Macho Man had a long feud back in the day. That got him. Yeah, that got him over the top. Made him somebody that people loved. And
yep, I agree.
All right. This is Coach DeBoer's first rivalry game.
Yeah.
And this one's interesting because I feel like these are pretty evenly matched teams. I don't think Alabama or Tennessee really has an advantage other than it's at Neyland Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably right. It's funny because after we played South Carolina last week, I'm sitting there going, yeah, this is not good. It's not good. There's so many things going wrong with this team, and we talked about it on Tuesday, so many situational issues and bad timing of plays. You were kind of saying that, and I think you and I looked at it from two different angles. You were kind of saying you thought Bama got lucky in the game. I kind of thought South Carolina got lucky in the game, to be honest with you. I'm like looking at it going, they had to get an onside kick and a fourth down conversion and, number of boneheaded plays. But we let them back in it for sure. And then I'm like, okay, well, that's not good. Tennessee's good. I honestly thought, like, early in the year, I'm looking at Tennessee with Nico Iamaleava, and I'm like, this might be one of the best teams in the SEC, if not the best team in the SEC.
Right.
And then I watch them last couple of weeks. Obviously got bullied by Arkansas, and then kind of got bullied throughout the first half by Florida, of all teams. And I was like, man, this is just not the product that I think Tennessee fans expected to see on the field. And I think there's more alarm bells going off with them right now than there's Bama fans, right? Josh Heupel's in, what is he, year 4? I don't even know what year. Year 4, right? So I think when you look at it from that angle, you're like, this is kind of supposed to be one of his crowning years, and yet it's not. And I think Bama fans, for the most part, you don't love what you've seen, but at least you've fallen back on the fact that Kalen DeBoer is in year 1, and there's some transition and other things like that. But I'm with you. It's like a meeting of two teams that are still trying to find an identity and kind of had a similar season going on.
Yeah, well, and for coaches, it's finding an identity too. Is Josh Heupel going to be 2-2 against Alabama? If you're Tennessee's coach after losing, all those games in a row, right?
Yep.
You go 2-2 against Bama. I think Tennessee fans would be like, hey, this guy's doing a decent job. Coach DeBoer, you win this game, and hey, you beat Tennessee. It matters. You lose this game, and I feel like the repercussions are way worse. It's like all of a sudden now, we're losing our rivals. You lose your friend. Now that LSU game on the road becomes really tough. And then the Auburn game stacks up. And I don't look at this Bama team right now and feel like you can scratch in a W against anyone that they're playing on the schedule except Mercer.
No, I completely agree, man. And I was checking Tennessee's schedule a minute ago and seeing, kind of what they have left, right? And so it's interesting to me because if Tennessee can pull this one off, it seems like it's a downhill slope until you get to Georgia. Now, the Vanderbilt matchup, we can kind of talk back and forth about what Vanderbilt actually is. I think that they've shown themselves to be a decent team, although I still have no idea how they lost to Georgia State. But when you look at Tennessee, they're going to get Kentucky, Mississippi State at home. Then they're going to Georgia. They got a UTEP game, and then at Vanderbilt. It's kind of it just feels like for both these teams, it kind of aligns what you're thinking about for the rest of the year. Kind of aligns, kind of what your brand is. The sample size is big enough after this week on both sides to say, okay, this team is this.
Right.
Not they can't get better or not they won't get worse, but it's like 3 games in, you're like, well, you saw South Florida, Wisconsin, like Western Kentucky. Like, I don't know. Like, dude, you start to get this far into the year, you're like, okay, this is what this team is, at this point. So hopefully we get the good foot put forward by Bama, go on the road, backs against the wall, and we can come out swinging.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. I hope that we see someone besides Ryan Williams. And I guess that person's Jeremy Bernard, right? But maybe somebody besides Bernard and Williams step up at the wide receiver spot. Kobe Prentice and Kendrick Law both dealing with injuries, probable, which means that they're, I guess, likely to play. Although I feel like until I see them out on the field, even if you play and you're probable, but you're not your best, what kind of an impact do you make? But I feel like the offense needs somebody else to make an impact besides a guy that's supposed to be in high school, right? And he's second
I'm with you
in receiving yards.
Well, it's funny, and you kind of you go a different direction for obvious reasons, and I think that's what, unfortunately for me, I think what Bama is moving forward under Kalen DeBoer is a Ryan Williams, Jalen Milroe, Kendrick Law, Kobe Print, like I think Jeremy Bernard.
Right.
I think those are the key pieces. For me, I'm looking at a 350-pound left tackle, a midseason All-American and Tyler Booker and Justice Haynes and Jam Miller, and going, dude, I'd love to rush for about 300 on Tennessee. Like I would love to come out, hit them in the mouth up front because I don't think they're very good in the interior of either line of scrimmage. Show a little bit of patience, like I've talked about on the show 15 times in the running game, both from play calling and actually running the ball, and be able to just, 8-10 yards at a time, just chunk yardage on the ground. Only use Milroe when you absolutely need to on some of the bootleg stuff and some of the read option RPOs. So yeah, I'm with you. I'd love to see somebody other than Ryan Williams. You mentioned wide receivers, and I'm just, hey, hand that ball off. Let's get this thing rolling downhill, man. Like we are way too good of an offensive line, and I know that there's been ups and downs. Mick, people have different, viewpoints and opinions. Trust me when I say this. It's very, very good offensive line. You have 3 guys that are All-American potential on the left, and good quality on the right, for the most part, man. So I know it's a selfish thing, and if they come out and win either way, I won't be picky about how it comes. But the ground game, to me, the running game, if you want to sustain success in the SEC, is how you get it done. There's going to be games where you throw for 300, 400 yards, whatever. But if you want to sustain and be consistent, you do it by handing it off to the tailback in the SEC, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, I agree with you, man. And I feel like that is the biggest disappointment of this team. I knew the secondary was going to struggle. They lost so many guys. They've actually been a little better than I thought, right? I'm a little disappointed in the safety spot, but you lose the best safety you ever had. You got guys that maybe some people feel like Malachi Moore really isn't in the right spot for him, but he's doing it anyway. And that's how teams are. Sometimes you got to do something that isn't really your strength to help the team. The defensive line's been good, maybe finish some tackles, but I feel like they're getting pressure. I thought the offensive line was going to be the strength of this team. And there's been moments where they've been great. The last 6 minutes against South Florida, right? Certain times against Georgia, they look dominant, and including the first half, which I thought, wow, this really has unlocked the potential of this team. Since the second half of Georgia, Bama to me looks like just a very mediocre team, and I think it starts right there with your guys up front. If they could, they dominate. And you talk about Booker, he is the best player on the team. He'll be the highest draft pick. but is Roberts injured? Some people kind of said maybe he's out there playing hurt a little bit. Pritchett has been good and bad, but he's better than the other options. Haven't heard a lot about Proctor, and sometimes that's good when you're an offensive lineman.
It is.
And
he's been good in the run game. I think I thought Proctor played extremely well against Georgia. I just think that, and this is a scheme thing. Sometimes when you look at, and I know how these offensive coaches are operating, they're looking at going, dude, our offensive line might be the strength of the team. Hey, let's put them up to bat. Oh, you know where we would have normally called a running back in on that empty protection, and we would have said, hey, there's 6 coming. Maybe the running back should pick up 1. They're putting this offense line up to bat in situations I don't think are necessarily fair. And I kind of put this on Twitter last week, and I can't remember if you and I talked about it Tuesday or not. So you go like an empty set, right? And what the defense was doing is they were walking up linebackers to the line of scrimmage, basically giving you a 6-man defensive front, right? Four defensive linemen, 2 linebackers. Didn't matter where, A gap, B gap, C gap, whatever it is. So the way you operate on an offensive line, especially when you're in empty, as you say, the fastest route to the quarterback is the direct line, right? So we have to protect the A gap first, all right? B gap second, and then any edge rushers can just be third. So what was happening is you have, Parker Brailsford sliding left, right? And then they would put that right side of that offensive line up to bat, and they would say, hey, there's 3 guys. There's a guy in the A gap, B gap, and C gap. You guys take the most dangerous of the 2, right? And then, we'll adjust with that with Jalen Milroe in the backfield. Well, the problem is all 3 guys would come, and then after 1 or 2 steps, one of the defensive guys would back out, right? Just kind of bluff the blitz. Well, that's enough to get whoever's at right guard at the time to want to block in the A gap, and the right tackle, Elijah Pritchett, to block the B gap. All right, and then they would both react and go, oh, man, the guy in the A gap dropped. Let me see if I can react, right, and bump back out and block the guys in the B gap and the C gap. That way Jalen doesn't get hurt. Now, we used to do something similar when I was in college, but it wasn't like, it was basically like, let me see if I can keep him from getting killed, but I know he's throwing hot anyways. But what seems to be happening with Bama's offensive line, Jalen's not throwing hot. It's just like it's expected of them to pick up, the most dangerous 2 of the 3. And then even if they get bluffed, it's like we're leaning on them to be good enough to bounce back outside and block a guy they didn't even know was rushing, right? And so that's frustrating for me because I know that it looks like on film, you're looking at it and going, well, they got beat around the edge. Yeah, man, but we shouldn't be asking our right tackle, who has struggled at times anyways, to take 1 step into the B gap and then bump back out to an edge rusher and block. It's hard enough to block edge rushers in the SEC as it is, Mick, without taking a step inside first and then having to redirect, right? And so that happened like 3 times against South Carolina. And credit to South Carolina, man. They did a great job of drawing that up. Empty protections where that the running back flare into the flat's going to be kind of Jalen Milroe's first read. We know that a lot of times that is his first read. So they just said, look, man, we're going to present 6-man fronts. See if Jalen can dissect it. See if he can, find his hot read for whoever drops. And then maybe if we drop that linebacker or that end, into kind of that slant area, maybe we can even pick one off. And so I think they had Jalen confused a lot of times over what he was seeing, who was coming, who was blocking, and where the free man would be. So I know that it looked like on paper for people that against South Carolina that Bama's offensive line was struggling at times. To me, it had a lot more to do with Jalen Milroe in the backfield not being able to see who was rushing and where he needed to go with the ball, and then kind of pumping. And then, he gets hit in the backfield. It's like, oh, it's another sack. Bama's offensive line's not doing good. Like, we're asking them to do things they shouldn't have to do. And when they're just a one-on-one pass rush, they're really, really good most of the time. Okay. They've been the right side's been beat a couple times, but that's my 2 cents on it. And you know me, dude. I look at it from that perspective because I've been in those shoes before. Sometimes it just sucks. I mean, Andre Smith stepped on my toe one time, and I fell on my back, right? And I got bull rushed. And everybody's like, man, you got trucked. I'm like, well, dude, it's hard. I couldn't move my left foot. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is sometimes, So I always going to look at it from that perspective. But I just trust me when I say this. It's a very good unit, a very, very, very good unit. On their good days, they could be one of the best units in the country. But they are being asked to do a lot They're being asked to do a lot more than most of the offensive lines that came before them were asked to do. So my heart goes out to them, man. It's a tough job, Mick.
It is. I got another follow-up, but I want to remind everybody a couple things. First, covercrimson.com. Make sure that you guys go there and subscribe. Right now, you can join for $1 for that first month. Or if you do the annual subscription, look what I got here. You get one of these, the Cover Crimson t-shirt right here, which I love. Stylish, very soft.
Swaggy.
So, yeah, very swaggy. Very swaggy. It's not one of those cheap t-shirts. It's good material that you like to wear. So you get one of those if you do the annual. And make sure that you are here on YouTube, like and subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we're going with a new show. Sometimes live, sometimes recorded, but hit that bell so you know. And we're brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use the promo code NEXTROUND to double your initial deposit. All right, back to the conversation. So you talk about the offensive line. Everything you said makes sense to me. What can Milroe do? Or what can Nick Sheridan do? And I think this is the $1 million question here to fix this, because the games that Milroe gets protection, has time in the pocket, or busts a couple big runs early where they're afraid to go after him, he has great games. When they have him going back, thinking a lot in his face, like South Carolina did, it's a struggle. How can Alabama get away from these pass rushes and blitzes for Milroe and make him more comfortable and successful?
Well, and let me start by saying this, because I know there's going to be some reaction to what I just said. Roberts at right guard, he definitely got beat against South Carolina one time. No doubt. Got his face involved. He got beat. It was the same kind of thing that happened with Elijah Pritchett against Vanderbilt when on the sack fumble. Got beat, right? But the numbers, when you start to stack up and you're like, well, he got hit, it just starts to be like a little too much for me, like I said. What can they do? Well, that is the $1 million question, Mick. And the bottom line is there's a number of things. I don't know. I'm assuming, but I don't know that they already have something built in. All right. So when you see pressure looks like that, sometimes it's a running back flare the other direction. Sometimes the quarterback can simply bring in, an extra blocker, one of the tight ends, Oots or Dupree or whoever it is that's lined up out wide, and say, hey, let's use you to kind of block this A gap or block this B gap or this walked up linebacker. And a lot of times when you do that, if you show the ability as a quarterback or an offensive coordinator to kind of negate what they're doing, the defense will kind of move on. They'll kind of be like, well, they kind of saw it coming and maybe they'll bail anyways, right? I think the question for me moving forward is not what can they do, but what will they do? Because we talked, and you and I just brought it up at the top of the broadcast. When you have a new situation, a new scheme, new coaches, sometimes there are things that you haven't seen before, or maybe you didn't know you weren't good at. Like maybe you're like, well, this is why we can, opt for this protection, or we can run a kill player. This is when we need to, check to an RPO or whatever it may be. Sometimes you don't know that you're not very good at that. So I think adjusting moving forward is going to be the key. I don't know how they'll do that. Now, like I said, sometimes when you get like 6 across the front and everybody's at the line of scrimmage, the best thing to do sometimes is to run like a mid zone or an outside zone, or maybe even inside with a backside read, because that those gaps will all be sorted out in zone. Everybody's moving together. If one guy loops and stunts, everybody's kind of running zone, right? Either that, or you can go out, you can run a counter GTs, things like that. You can check to a run. The problem is when the defense smells blood in the water and they know you're in passing downs and they know that you're in an empty backfield, can't always do that. So I am hoping that Kalen and Nick Sheridan moving forward will look at the film with Jalen. Hey, this play, you should have done this. You knew we had this built in, right? Why didn't you check to the counter? Why didn't you check to a gap run? Why didn't you check to this? All right. When you get 6 across the front, give the look of a 6-man protection, whatever it may be. But I think that's the biggest question. To your point moving forward, it's like, what do they do? There's a million different things. You can check out of the play. I used to talk to Joe Pendry. Mick, you'll love this story. Joe Pendry would say that when he was Doug Flutie's offense coordinator, that Doug Flutie loved a 6-man front, and he would full 5-man slide the offensive line to the left. And Doug Flutie would say, that defensive end's mine, dude. That defensive end's mine. And what he would do is defensive end come at him. He'd pump fake like he was going to throw it over the defensive end's head, and he would duck under him and rush for about 20 yards, right? So I don't know. Like, there's a number of different things you can do and different ways you can attack it. And it just depends on what play you have drawn up and kind of what your hots are. The problem is that you have to actually implement those. And I think that the more that you can do it without getting beat by it and actually see it on film and say, well, I should have done that. Can we learn from it, Mick? Can we learn from it so that when it happens, because it's a copycat league in the SEC, so that when Tennessee runs the same style of blitzes against empty protection, that we have changes for that. And I think that's the most important thing to see this weekend.
I love me some Doug Flutie, man. I remember those days. Flutie
Flakes.
Flakes. The Hail Mary, one of the greatest Hail Marys of all time.
Yeah.
You're not the only one that on this channel talks Pendry. Because we're in here and I got Roger Schultz one day in here talking about him, and then Jake Coker talks about him all the time. This guy's a legend, man. We ought to have him on the All-American Report.
Dude, you don't understand. Joe Pendry was the offense coordinator for a while. Like, he wasn't because he didn't want the title. But Nick Saban calls Joe Pendry, and Joe Pendry is retired. He had been with the Texans when they started their organization. Joe Pendry basically says, I'll come coach for you, but I don't want to be a coordinator, and I don't really want to recruit. So Nick Saban, knowing how valuable a guy like that is, he says, all right, well, you can be the quarterback's coach, and you can recruit Birmingham. How about that? And so, and a lot of people don't remember this. There was a 3-week stretch when Nick Saban was hired where a guy named Steve Marshall was our offensive line coach. 3 weeks after Nick was hired, and he hires Steve Marshall, he's getting his staff together. Steve Marshall goes to like Cleveland for the Browns or maybe the Bengals to be their offensive line coach. So we're kind of left without one. Joe Pendry was like, I'll do it. And there was never a situation where Joe Pendry didn't have the answer. There was never like a, well, you got beat. He's a good athlete. You know, it was like I'll zoom in. I'll make you as big as the wall on the screen, and I'll show you where your, shoelace was untied. I don't know. Like there was never a thing where Joe didn't have the answer. Joe knew what exactly happened with your footwork, your head placement, your hand placement. Now, he didn't mean he always thought you could get it done, but he would put you in the best situation necessary. But man, he was a legend. He is a legend. I love that guy. He's one of the greatest coaches that was never a head coach in college football history.
Well, get it lined up, man. Let's bring him on the show.
Dude, I'd love to. I talked to him a pretty good amount. Need to give him a shout. And I know he's been on a couple other radio shows where I listen to him, man. He's something else.
Be great to have him on here. All right. Well, I guess it's time to talk before we wrap it up. Games in the SEC. We love to do this. You and I both on the second show of the week get into the matchups outside of Alabama and Tennessee. And I think it's a pretty good slate. It's not as bad. Last week was pretty good. The week before that wasn't very good though. So
it wasn't supposed to be, but you ended up the week before that with all the top 10 upsets, right? So I mean, true. Yeah, it always comes when you don't expect it.
Yeah. So let's start with I got to pull it up here because I want to save Georgia and Texas for last. I want people to have to stick around and listen to us look at the other games. But I mean, you know how it is. Like we do it that way because that's the way we do it. But of course, in their normal 11 o'clock slot, Auburn is at Missouri. It's a 4-point Missouri. They're a 4-point home favorite over Auburn. 50.5 is the over under.
One of the more shocking results of this season, I think we'll look back on it. Well, in SEC play, I think we'll look back and think it's kind of crazy that Missouri beat Vanderbilt.
Yeah,
I honestly believe that. When you look at the missed field goals by both those teams down the stretch, and then you go to overtime, Missouri and Vanderbilt, and everybody's like, man, I can't believe Vanderbilt took Missouri to overtime. I've said it on this show a number of times, Mick. Vanderbilt is good. They go out and dealt with business against Kentucky. It is what it is. No, I mean, who knows what brand of Auburn you're going to get, right? It seems like, and especially looking back on the Oklahoma game, it's like, they're putting it together offensively. And then the boneheaded throw and the interception going back the other way that loses you the game. Auburn to me is what they are right now. And God, man, I know if there's an Auburn fan watching right now, they are hating me and you probably too. What Auburn is doing right now, it seems like Auburn has been stuck in this for 12 years. it just seems like they've been stuck in this. Now I know they had some good years under Gus. Lord knows they had some Iron Bowl victories, but it's just like there's just questions about the operation, right?
Yeah.
And it just seems like there's always questions about the operation. Put 40 up one week and maybe put 10 up the next. And look, I mean, I had an Auburn fan say something to me about Vanderbilt beating Alabama, and I was like, this is the same quarterback that was at New Mexico State with lesser talent and housed Auburn by 21 last year. So it just, man, it's that's a game that I don't know if I can pick as far as what it is, because I don't know what it's a lot. I'm not picking Alabama, Tennessee. I mean, I hope Alabama wins, but it's just too hard to say what either one of those teams is, specifically Auburn right now, for me to really be comfortable picking either one of them. Missouri should be good, but man, Missouri, I'm still having a hangover from their result against Texas A&M. I have no idea. And I think that I really didn't know what Eli Drinkwitz was before this year. I know that they had some close ones last year, but I really have a lot of questions about now. So we'll see what happens in that one.
All right. South Carolina is at Oklahoma. 11:45 a.m. Central Time.
Let me just say this. Oklahoma better win this game.
Right.
As if Brent Venables, and I know his buyout is massive. There's no doubt about that. I know he's an Oklahoma son. All right, but that just seems like a program that is at such a crossroads after last week, where I think they're getting fed up already. And you expected that kind of year two leap, and you expected Brent to really have this lockdown defense and play, have his guys playing with a certain level of toughness. They haven't answered any questions, and they look worse to me than they did at times last year, which is it's crazy to think about. But, they've had the quarterback change, been back and forth on that. South Carolina, I know the result against Bama was a 2-point game, but like I said, I think South Carolina got lucky in a lot of those instances, and I'm the last person to ever say that. Oklahoma needs to go deal with business, or I think you might get into like week 10, week 11 and start wondering if that buyout's an option, because Oklahoma, you're in the SEC now. Texas is the number one team in the country. That seems like a runaway train right now. I like Oklahoma to do this just because I simply think that they're probably a little bit hungrier at this point. I know that's crazy to say.
All right, it's a 16.5-point spread. Texas A&M, who is on a roll right now, number 14 in the country, is at Mississippi State. On a normal week, I'd say, Mississippi State's 1-5. Who cares? But they scored 31 against Georgia last week, and you start to. I'm getting the feeling that they're starting to figure out the offense a little bit.
Let me just say this about this game. First of all, did you know that Texas A&M is in first place in the SEC?
Yes, I did.
Second thing I want to say about this, and tell me what that spread was you just said.
The spread in the ball game is 16.5. So that's a home dog getting 16.5. 55.5 is the over under.
Okay, Mick, let me just ask you this. Why is the first place team in the SEC, who is 5-1, just over only a 2-touchdown favorite against a team that's 1-5 and the doormat of the SEC right now? Where's my pencil when I do the Corso? Closer than the experts think.
Yeah.
If I was betting this one, just simply reading into Vegas, and I'm with you, man. There's been a lot of talk about Mississippi State over here in Atlanta because of what they did against Georgia last week. I thought they showed themselves to be pretty good, kind of throw their hat in the fight. And here's what I'll say about Mississippi State, man. And I firmly believe this, and I like Jeff Lebby. They're playing hard, dude. Like, I know they're 1-5 and they're not very good, but goodness, they play hard. They play hard, dude. And they're just at a talent disadvantage at this point. I mean, what, they have 35 guys or something like that leave the program after last year. It's nuts. But I think Texas A&M, we just look at Texas A&M and think of them like this. I'm not sure it's like this. To me, it's Texas A&M's kind of like this. You know what I mean? So I think Mississippi State's growing as well. I think A&M wins, but I don't think it's bully ball the way we've seen Texas A&M in the last few weeks. I think Texas A&M probably beats a little bit of a nail biter, probably beats Mississippi State here. I think Mississippi State continues to grow. All
right, Vanderbilt better not lose to Ball State after the back-to-back weeks that they've put together. Not even worth talking about. 25-point spread. LSU, number 8 now, at Arkansas. Arkansas is dangerous. They beat Tennessee. It's only a 2.5-point spread, but LSU is a road favorite. And again, another 55.5 over under. I don't know why Vegas likes that 55.5 so much this week.
I want to pick LSU in this. I think they have the talent. I think when you look at their offensive line, I think they have a number of players that are a lot better. But here's what I'll say. Garrett Nussmeier is a little bit too much of a risk taker for me at this point in the year, man. He's going to try to fit these balls into some of the tightest windows imaginable when he throws it down the field. Arkansas is opportunistic. I think Arkansas is gritty. I think they're blue collar. I think they're a lot like Sam Pittman, where they want to go get in a slugfest and go home and have a cold beer. And I think I would love to take Arkansas on this one in the upset. I just think that LSU I think they can be bullied on the defensive line. I think the interior of their offensive line is suspect at times as well. And I just think that Arkansas is going to try to get in a bare knuckle brawl and say, we are going to literally try to light you up until you fumble or throw interceptions or whatever else. And we'll just score points defensively. So I honestly think this one may look a lot like the Arkansas-Tennessee game did, a couple of weeks ago. I think Arkansas maybe jumps in there and grabs this one.
I do too. I think that the Bobby Petrino offense is dangerous, and they're a team that is getting better as the season goes on. Plus, they're
Nick. I'm pretty sure Arkansas was over under before the year was like 3.5, maybe 4.5, but they're much better than people understand, and it's because they just play with some grit.
Yeah, they're tough. Florida hosting Kentucky. Kentucky is a favorite. A 1.5 over the Gators. The Gators lost Graham Mertz, and as much as I hate to say it, they're on a collision course with another coaching staff being fired at the end of the year, and now they don't have an offense.
Yeah, and it's as far as that goes, what's crazy? It's like sometimes when I look at these games, I want to pick a certain team, and then I see the line, and I'm like, why? Like, why is Kentucky favored in this game? And I know it's the quarterback injury. Right? I know it's the quarterback injury, but still, I mean, DJ Lagway's pretty freaking good.
Talented.
If you've watched him play. I like Florida in this game. I know Kentucky's favored. I know that Vegas is trying to tell me something when they say, hey, Kentucky's a favorite. But Florida, to me, I think they've started playing better defensively. I think we saw it last week. I think the offense can still operate at a decent level under DJ Lagway. And I think that his legs are just the X factor, man. I expect him to get loose, have some rushing yards, have some good scrambles, probably make a mistake here and there. But Kentucky has shown me nothing they do consistently on offense. And I mean nothing. Go back to they don't score a touchdown against Georgia, obviously. They look very similar against Vanderbilt last week. Like Kentucky's just their operation's bad offensively. So give me Florida in this one. I know Kentucky's a favorite. I like Florida still. I'm going to stick to my guns on that one, Vegas.
All right, 2 more games. Georgia is at Texas. Number 5, Georgia. Number 1, Texas. The Longhorns are a 5-point favorite in Austin. 56.5 is the over-under in this game.
If you ask Georgia fans over here in Atlanta whether they think they're going to win this game or not, it's an absolute.
They're winning it. They're winning it, Mike.
I think you are right. This was brought up to me by Rusty Mansell earlier today, who is Dogs HQ and Georgia Insider and whatever else. He basically said, and I completely agree with him, if you are going to make it to the SEC championship, because one of these teams probably will, if you're going to make it to the SEC championship, you better freaking win the SEC championship. And what I'm talking about that's on the line for that is if you go to the SEC championship, you add game number 13, and you lose, 2 weeks later, you will be playing probably on the road, but maybe not, in the first round of the playoffs, right? You have now added, by just winning the SEC champion or losing the SEC championship, you've added a game to a schedule that is extremely long, right? And so the question was, could we see Texas and Georgia again? Depends on what Bama does and all these other teams. A&M, don't want to disrespect anybody, but I'm with you. I watched Quinn Ewers last week. It didn't look like the Quinn Ewers we saw before the injury. I think he was rusty. I think that he had a hard time shaking it off. You go back and look at his throws, 0 throws downfield, like 0. Mm-hmm. Did not throw the ball downfield at all. It was all 5-yard throws, into the flat, right across the middle, screen game. That's the beauty of Sarkisian, man. But Georgia, with all the injuries they've had, I still think that they can go into Austin and take care of business. They get amped up. I think it's a slugfest, much in the way the game against Bama was, but they know what to expect. And I look at what they can do. I think Carson Beck is such a good player, man. He'll find some electricity out of somebody. I think Georgia will get that ground game going too. I like Georgia in this game.
This is the game where everyone goes, you know what? We need Arch. This is the game that starts the quarterback controversy, Texas.
Hope
that Ewers gets hurt so that it's easier to make that move, because if he doesn't, you guys are going to be, and I don't mean hurt. I don't want to see him hurt, but I mean,
right.
When you walk over to a guy on the sideline and you're like, man, your ankle's bothering you.
So
right?
You're saying a little Jalen Tua action over there right now? You're saying it's go time? Wow.
Except we didn't get 2 games of Tua ripping everybody apart. You and I kept hearing about it from our sources in practice every day.
Yeah.
You remember that? We're like, what are they doing? Like, this guy's.
Well, you know what's funny? The same thing happened with Jalen a couple years before. It's like I'm going to the Letterman scrimmages and I'm like, oh man, Cooper Bateman, I guess it was, and whoever else was in that quarterback battle. I'm like, man, which quarterback looked better? I'm like, I don't know, but man, the freshman kid from Texas was tearing it up. He's pretty good. And then Jalen ends up starting like every game except the first one. So it's not shocking. So we'll see.
No. All right, final game on the slate is the one that we care about the most. Number 7, Alabama, 5-1, 2-1 in the SEC. Number 11, Tennessee, although they're ranked number 10 in the coaches poll. 5-1, 2-1 in the SEC. This game to me feels like it's a loser leave town game, and the leave town means you're not making the college football playoff.
I think maybe this is just me hoping. All right, maybe this is just wishful, because I'll be honest, I'm not gambling this game. I'm not touching it. Wouldn't put money either way. Don't know what I'll see.
And I didn't say 3-point spread. Bama's the favorite, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the line.
It's half is the over/under.
I've seen the line. How did they make a favorite? And I know they're looking at Tennessee against Florida, Tennessee against Arkansas. It is what it is. I think that this can be a get-right game for Bama as far as the way they play defense. I don't think Tennessee has out-physicaled anybody this year. And I think that's one of the questions I've had about Bama's defense is how physical do they want to be? How physical does this secondary really want to be? And that's the biggest red flag I've had about Bama all year. They don't look like they want to thump on defense the way we've grown to see, right? Who's holding them accountable leadership-wise? Is it personnel? Is it they just don't look like they want to hit at all times back in the secondary. Neither does Tennessee on offense, all right? And so I think you're probably going to have some chunk yardage from Josh Heupel on the ground, and they rushed for 100 yards last week. They've done it a number of times. But I just think that this is Bama's secondary's time to shine. Nobody's going to really try to outman you. Like, now is the time to step up, maybe get a couple of takeaways. Nico Iamaleava has not really lived up to the hype that I think a lot of us thought he would at the beginning of the year. Give me Bama getting right in the secondary, starting to get right in the ground game. Give me Bama by 10 points in a tough road matchup with Tennessee. And I just want to see a little growth, Mick, just a little growth over what we've seen from the last couple of weeks. Match up the growth we saw for the defense last week, because I think they did grow. Match that up with Jalen Milroe that we saw from all the games prior to that. Please, Mick. I want to smoke a stogie on Saturday night. I know you do too.
Got my humidor right there. I'm hoping, man, if we don't stop Dylan Sampson, we're in big trouble.
Yeah, I agree.
This
he's gonna get his yard. I mean, that's what they do. They spread you out and they run it up the middle. I get it, but let's go.
Got to beat our guys up front. Got to beat their guys up front. That's what it's going to come down to. And if we don't, then it's going to be one of those games where you're going. And these guys the Tennessee could pull away from us, because once you don't stop the run, then they start hitting you over the top, and we'll see what happens. But then I don't know. I worry about every game that Bama plays. Mike, I'm sorry, I'm just that guy.
I think this is just our new reality, Mick.
Yeah,
I know. I think it is for the time being. But I don't think it's a Bama problem. I think this is a
college.
I think it's an SEC. Yeah, I think it's a college football thing. I think it's just the new reality. I mean, look, you talk to Georgia fans, they think that the sky's falling, dude. They beat Mississippi State by 10. They're like, what?
Yep.
What? Are you kidding me? Beat Mississippi State by 10?
Yeah.
So it's a new reality, dude. It's a puncher's game. We'll see what happens.
Well, guys, thanks for hanging out with us again. CoverCrimson.com. Join up. We're on the message boards. We will have recruiting on there. Anything going on, we'll be covering that as well. You can sign up for $1, and then if you do the annual subscription, you get the T-shirt, and we want you to be a part of that. And then make sure that you like and subscribe here. That's free. I know it's a lot to ask. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. I mean, that's basically the like part of it. Hit the bell. We're Alabama guys. We know how to do it. I know if this was an Auburn channel, if we were on the Barn, I'd just ask you to do one or none of those things because it would be so much to ask. But us Bama folks, we can do more. We can multitask.
Correct. Yes, we can.
All right. Mybookie.ag, promo code next round, double your initial deposit. Be a great weekend to check that out as well. And Mike just gave you a way to go on there and have a lot of success. All right. For Mike Johnson, I'm Mick Gillispie. Thanks for hanging, guys, and roll tide.